I'm Robyn, and I've been playing viola with Orchestra of the Swan for about 7 years. Although I work with Orchestra of the Swan very regularly, it's not a full-time orchestra, which means that I can't claim it's my job. Actually, I describe myself as a freelance viola player, and I have what is referred to as a portfolio career. It sounds quite fancy, but all it means is that I do a whole range of concerts and workshops with people like Orchestra of the Swan. So Orchestra of the Swan is a chamber orchestra, and I also play with opera orchestras and ballet orchestras, symphony orchestras. I do some pop tours and play with some chamber groups, and I also do some teaching, both in schools, sort of one-to-one, and for National Children's Orchestra of Great Britain, which is coaching other viola players in an orchestral setting. So building this buffet of professional work, it's not really a sort of a smooth linear progression. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the different ways that I've ended up doing what I'm doing. In my school, you had to be year 4 before you were allowed to have violin lessons. I can remember still that first day where Mrs. Marshall, the violin teacher, asked who would like to learn, and there were too many people to learn, so we had to have a little sort of tryout. And I remember saying my alphabet backwards from G to A, and just really hoping that I got picked. And then when I got picked, taking the violin home and opening the case and looking at it and closing the case and going away and coming back and looking again, and just being absolutely smitten with this instrument. So from there, I spent about a year, well, just over a year, having violin lessons. And then after I'd done my grade 1, Mrs. Marshall suggested that I might like a viola because I was quite tall and the viola was a little bit bigger. I wasn't really sure what a viola was at that stage, but it sounded reasonable enough. And I'm really glad that I took that opportunity. There are lots and lots of similarities between the violin and the viola, but there's quite a fundamental difference in the repertoire and in the role that violas play in ensembles. And I feel like that gives them quite different personalities, and the viola is definitely where I feel most at home. So where I grew up was Northamptonshire, and they've got an amazing music service. So I had all sorts of opportunities to make music with other children. So at the end of year 5, I auditioned for their county junior orchestra, and I remember that first day, first rehearsal in September, sort of arriving and not knowing anyone, but settling in really quickly and really loving it, to the point that I actually spent the whole of the rest of my school time there. So that was year 6, and I was in a county orchestra right until I left year 13, 8 years later. By the time I got to county youth orchestra, that was where all the really good stuff happened. That was where we went on tour. We went to Finland, to Italy and to Poland. We played at the South Bank Centre in London as part of Music for Youth. We even played at the Royal Albert Hall. It was just so exciting. I made loads of really good friends there, particularly there were 3 other string players. We really loved playing with each other, and we started a little string quartet. That was where I got my first real love of chamber music. All of this time I knew that I really loved playing the viola, but I didn't necessarily always feel like I was that good at it. Like I said, it was a really strong music service, so I was surrounded by incredible musicians my age and older. When I was in year 12, I almost didn't take A-level music. I'd found the composing element of GCSE so hard that it was enough to make me really think twice about whether or not I wanted to do the A-level. But I did in the end, and I'm really glad that I did. I also didn't always practice that much. I definitely owe an apology to Mrs. Gibbs, who was my teacher sort of after year 8. I don't think I really practiced the whole time that I had lessons with her. And I'm pretty sure I fell asleep every Saturday morning for my first year of youth orchestra because I was doing a morning paper round, and by the time I got to Saturday I was absolutely exhausted. None of that ultimately got in my way. There were plenty of moments, like I said, where I could have changed path. I could have done different A-levels. I also nearly didn't go to music college, I hedged my bets a bit and I applied to read philosophy at university as an option. But I did stick in this path, partly because I couldn't really imagine not playing the viola. And more than partly, quite a lot, because there were two teachers in Northamptonshire who made a massive difference to me at that moment. And that was Kate Bickerdike and John Spinner. They were really important to me, not just the formal training that they offered me in terms of lessons and coaching, but they were quite young teachers when I was there. And just having them around, having them present as these fully embodied musicians was really exciting, and it gave me the ability to imagine what that could be like as an adult who played a string instrument. Coincidentally, they'd both studied at Birmingham Conservatoire at different points in their careers, and I was able to start imagining what that might be like for me. So once I'd done my audition at Birmingham and I'd been offered a place, I didn't look back, basically. That was it. I was going, I got there, I loved it. I loved it so much. I stayed there for quite a long time. After I'd done my undergraduate, I went back for their master's programme, and then I spent an extra year there with a string quartet as a junior fellow. I loved it. It was brilliant. There were plenty of times when I worried that I wasn't good enough, but I had incredible support and managed to turn a lot of setbacks into opportunities to learn. For example, before my final year, I had quite a bad shoulder injury, which meant that I took a whole year out to recover from that. But I learnt a lot about the physicality of being a musician and the work outside of a practice room that you need to do to maintain the strength and the ability to sort of do that for like 3 hours at a time. While I was in Birmingham, I started to pick up a little bit of teaching. That was kind of my first professional work, and I was playing in string quartets at weddings. And from there, I started to do orchestral gigs, and things kind of just grew from there. The funny thing about music, like I said at the beginning, is it's not really a linear progression. There's no sort of, if you do this, then you'll be able to do this, and then this will happen. Almost every moment in my career so far where a door has opened is because there's been someone on the other side who I've had a personal connection with in some capacity, who's been able to invite me through. That's not to say that I haven't worked hard or done auditions. There are plenty of things that I've auditioned for, and then as a student, having done a student experience, that's been the opportunity for me to make a professional connection, for example. But I think it speaks to the fundamental delight of music as a way of building connections between times and places and ideas, but most of all, and most importantly, between people. So you might think that I've put a bit of a strong emphasis on the things that have been difficult or slightly negative about my career, about learning an instrument. But the thing I think is really important, and that I would like you to leave this video knowing, is that I've only told you one story here. I could have told you the story where I got distinctions and I won prizes and I was offered leader positions the first time that I auditioned for a group. Or I could have told you the story where I've travelled the world and I've worked with celebrities. But I think there are a lot of those stories already out there about orchestral musicians. There's no shortage of child prodigies or the youngest person on this instrument to get a job in an orchestra. So I feel quite confident that you will have heard that kind of story in plenty of other places, and that you'll continue to hear that story, all those successful, wonderful stories of musicians and their joyful progression. And that sort of bountiful array of stories is why I've chosen to tell you this story, which I think is one that you hear less often, and one which is often a little bit more hidden, because this is the bit that musicians struggle with privately. And so I'd like you to know that you are not weird, or you're not on your own if you experience any of these things, and that you'll find a way through. And the last thing that I'd like to say to you is that remember, it's the things that make working as a musician the most difficult, which are also the things that make it the most worthwhile. And so I hope you continue to learn and to grow and to enjoy yourself.